Do you want snappy text like this? Okay, I'm not going to do the whole intro animation. If I did, we'd be here all day. So I'll limit it to just a couple of layers. Bring in your Fusion comp, take yourself into Fusion. Now, if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend that you go and get Reactor, download it, install it. Once you've got it installed and you've done the restart and resolve and all that kind of malarkey, open Reactor and search for wireless. And you're looking for these three here: wireless fuse, wireless 3D fuse, and wireless 3D material fuse. The wireless links is what you're after. Install them, restart, resolve, and be back. You'll see why in a minute. So, setting up our text. All our text is happening in 3D. Bring your text 3D node in. Now, before you start typing away, think about what font you're going to be using. It's probably best to use a consistent font throughout. It looks nicer. You're probably better picking a font that has several different weights as well. The font I'm going to use is Roboto, because that's got lots of different weights and it's nice and sort of thick for your text. Once you've set your text node up with your font, what I suggest you do is you then make a copy of it, just because it's easier to copy a text node than to keep setting it up each time. So first text node, put in whatever text you want, spell it properly. What I suggest you do is you then copy that, select your text node, hit F2 on the keyboard and just rename it so that you know what each of your text nodes is. Otherwise it's going to get really confusing. So I'm going to copy and paste. So you want do you, and then on the next pane we're going to have, now you've got do you want snappy text like this. So we'll do the first three layers. After that it kind of gets repetitive and you'll get the general idea. So we can now get rid of our spare thing, work down, rename. Okay, so now rather than working with each individual text node, what we're going to do is we're going to pair them together so that two nodes make one pane of our text display. So we've merged these two together with the merge 3D. What we're going to do now is we're going to come to the first of our text and we're going to just pull it up so that you can see both text. Now what we need to do is resize them, change the font weight or face or whatever you call it, style, and we need to make roughly a rectangle kind of shape out of it. So we can, for example, with the do you, we can keep that as black. That's black as in the style, not the color. And then we can come to want, we can change that to a different face, maybe light. And if necessary, we can resize that as well. But as it happens, we don't need to because that kind of fits quite well. So that would be your first panel. So now we'll set up the other panels. So now we need to lay them out. What we're going to do is bring in another merge node, merge 3D node, that is not a merge node. And this is going to be the main scene. Everything will sort of flow into this for the time being. So what we're going to do is bring in another merge node, merge 3D node, that is not a merge node. And this is going to be the main scene. Everything will sort of flow into this for the time being. So you can pipe all 3 of your merge nodes into it. Now you can view the whole scene and it looks a mess, but that's all right, we'll sort it out. Okay, so we need to start moving stuff around. So we're not going to touch the actual text nodes. We're going to use the merges to move stuff around. So select the first merge for your do you want and come to the inspector, go to the transform node. What we're going to do is we're going to rotate it 90 degrees round, and that's around the X axis. No, it's not, it's around the Y axis, sorry. So select Y and just drag so that it's 90 degrees or minus 90 degrees. So the do you want text is now at right angles to everything else, like so. Now we need to move it along so that it's running at the edge of this T. Now you can either do it by changing the X axis up in your numbers here, or you can drag the little blue arrow in your viewer and just pull it. Now in 3D it's quite difficult trying to judge where you are. So if you come to the edge, basically where this green arrow is where your text is. And you're kind of pulling it out. But as I say, parallax starts to play a part. And because we've got no extrusion on this text, there's no point sort of viewing it directly down, because as soon as you view it directly down, you lose your text and you can't see where it is. So just keep moving around, you'll get there. Once you've got it as far out as you need it, we need to pull it back so that it sits kind of on a corner with the other text. Somewhere around there, I think should do it. So now we've got that roughly in position, we need to come round our second block of text. So do you want snappy text? It's staying where it is. So what we need to do is get the like this down flat. So again, not playing with the text nodes, but hit the merge node. We're going to lay it down on its back. So we're going to rotate this one on the X axis by minus 90. Like so. And now again, we can use the handles. If I go to single view, it's probably a bit easier to see. So the green handle is the one that we want on this one. You just pull until it comes to just like there. So now our 3 elements are in place. If we look, those 2 line up quite nicely. However, this is a bit big. If you look, it kind of pokes above the S here. So come back to your merge node for do you want, come to scale and just pull it down until it's about level. You'll then need to come and reposition it to be back at the corner. Like so. I can pull this one out a bit further as well. So that's the basis of your text. So next we need to think about animating it. What we also need to do is think about a camera so that we can animate how we see the text. So the first thing we're going to do is put the camera in and start to animate what we're looking at. So select your merge node. This is your scene merge node, not your individual ones. And just click on camera. And this will add a camera to your scene. The camera by default sits in the middle here, so we need to move it. So if we just pull it back like so. Now what we also want to do is change where the camera's looking at. You can do it sort of manually, you can position it, you can rotate it, etc. But the easier way of doing it is with your camera selected, come to the transform tab of your camera in the inspector and click on use target. This puts this target into the 3D scene and the camera will always look at that target regardless of where you position it. So what we can do is we can put this target where we want the camera to look, and then we can position the camera to give the view that we want. So at the start of the animation, we want the camera basically looking at this pretty much flat on. So what we can do is we can grab our target, we can bring it over so that it's level with our text, and then we can position it kind of in the middle of our text, like so. Now what we can do is we can start dragging our camera around, and it will always look at that target. So what we need to do now is go to twin view, or two viewers, select your merge node again, and this time select the render 3D node. This is what will get output back to your timeline via the media out. So this basically converts this 3D scene into a flat 2D image. And currently this is what it sees. So now we start playing with the camera. So we can pull it back a bit. And we need it so that it's looking flat at our text, which is about there. And then we can fill our screen with that. Don't worry about this gubbins here for the time being, we will get rid of that. So this is the start of our animation. So back at frame 0, this is where our camera is going to start. So still with the camera selected, come to the inspector, right click on the word translation and check Animate Translation Group, and right click on Target and Animate Target Group. So you've set keyframes for the position and where the target is. So now we're going to think about animating this text. And the way I'm going to animate this text is simply with the right on sliders in the two nodes. So what I'm going to do is come to the inspector, set a keyframe on the right on property and just drop it all the way to 0. Come to frame 10 and drag the slider out until the word do is visible. So there. This automatically sets your second keyframe. Come to frame 20 and bring it all the way out. And now I'm going to switch, still on frame 20, to the word want. I'm going to keyframe at frame 20, drop it down to 0, come to frame 30 and put it all the way up. These timings are arbitrary. You can adjust them as you need to. If you need to time them to speech, for example, you'd put markers on your timeline which you could view in a keyframe editor, and you could set these keyframes to those markers. So now we've got the animation going. I don't want it to appear a letter at a time. I want it to appear a word at a time. And to do that, what we need to do is come to the top of the screen and open the spline editor. Come to the three dots and make sure show only selected tool is checked, and then click on the do you and select the end value. Now come to this icon here that says zoom to fit. Select all these keyframes, or all three keyframes, and if you come to the bottom, you've got a row of icons down here. Fourth one along is step in. Click that. Now what will happen, every time you hit a keyframe, the words will be at that point rather than each letter appearing in between. So like that. And we're going to do the same with the want. Select the end, zoom to fit, select keyframes and step in. So now the three words will appear one at a time. So now we're going to consider our camera again. At this point, in fact, probably at this point, so come back to frame 20, select your camera, right click on the word translate, set keys on the group, and do the same for target, set keys on target. So we've now set keyframes at frame 20. So between 0 and 20, our camera's not going to move. We're going to move the camera between 20 and 45. So come to frame 45. And now we're going to reposition our camera and our target. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the target so that it's at the corner. Again, these are arbitrary animation positions. You don't have to do any of these. You can totally change them to your own liking. Oh, what I didn't do and what you can do, if you come back to frame 20, go to the control setting of the camera and keyframe the focal length. Then when you come to 45, you can actually push your camera quite close in, like so. But if you then reduce the focal length of your camera, it exaggerates the sort of perspective feel. And you can do that quite markedly to get quite a nice sort of perspective feel to the text. So next we're going to animate the snappy text. And to do that, what I want to happen is for the text to slide in from the left and appear. Now there may be ways of masking in 3D that I'm not aware of. The only way I've found to do it is to use a Shape 3D node as a matte. And basically what that does is the shape becomes invisible, but it also hides anything that is behind it. So that's what we're going to do. So what we need to do is set up our Shape 3D. To do that, we need to come to our text group, select the merge, come to our hotbar and add a second merge. The reason we're doing this is that I want the matte to stay static and this merge is going to be animated. So with our second merge, come to our hotbar, grab a Shape 3D and just bring it and pipe it in. By default, this is a plane, which is what we want. Also by default, it is sat in exactly the same space as our snappy text. So we need to move it forward slightly. To do that, with your shape selected, come to transform, hold the control key and just slightly increase the Z value to about 0.003, and that just lifts it forward off the text. Now if we click on perspective, right click on perspective and select front, we get our text and our matte, and we can position it so that it covers our text. Now we need to make it wider, so come to controls, uncheck lock width and height and increase the width so that it completely covers our text. Now what we can do is slide it over so that our text is visible like so, and we want it just on the edge. And now, still with your Shape 3D selected, come to controls and then open matte and check is matte. Now the Shape 3D looks as though it's disappeared, but it's still there. And if we now come to our text group and select its merge node, we're on frame 30 and we want it to take half a second to come out, so 45. So with this merge selected, in your transform, right click and animate translation group. In fact, you don't even need to do that because we're only going to be moving it along the x-axis, so you can just keyframe the x-axis. And we're going to come to frame 45 and keyframe the x-axis again. So that just sets, as it happens, it's at 0 anyway, so it doesn't matter, but it just sets where our end position of the animation is. So if you come back to frame 30, which is the start position of the animation, and just slide your text and it disappears like so. So now if we play through, don't worry about the stuff that you can see here at the minute, we'll sort that out. You get your text come in and then this slides at the same time. Now, what you will have noticed is that we can no longer see our do you want text, and that's because the matte affects anything that comes into this merge node, even though it's on a separate node. I don't know why, but it does. So the workaround is that we need to set this up with its own camera and render node, and then we can merge them all back together afterwards. So if we just move everything down, I'm going to disconnect this from the main merge. For clarity, I'm going to move this up like so. Now, for this example, it doesn't really matter because there's only like 3 sets of text, but with the video I showed at the introduction, there were about half a dozen sets of text, many of which needed their own render path. This merge needs to be connected to this camera. All the other merges needed to be connected to this camera. So rather than have lots of pipes flying around, what I did was I used the wireless link node that I talked about at the beginning. The way the wireless link works is it can mimic another node, but it doesn't need to be directly connected. So I'm going to set the camera up with a wireless link and we'll use that. So just for a second, disconnect your camera, bring it over, click away, shift space and type wireless link or wireless. You're looking for wireless link 3D. Now to make this work, you take your camera node and you drag it up to the little box that says input. This wireless node is now, if you like, a slave camera, and we can make instance copies of it. So select it, Control C to copy, click away, Shift Control and V to paste it. So now this is exactly the same. If you just do a straight copy, the camera gets taken out. With an instance, the camera stays in. We can now take our instance and pipe that back into the main scene merge node. We can now make another instance copy and drag it and pipe it into our separate path for our snappy text. Select the merge for the snappy text, add a render 3D, and what we can do now is merge that back onto the main flow to the media out, like so. And now if we view the media out, we've got our snappy text, but you can still see the do you want. Now the only other thing I noticed with the snappy text is at this point we can see it here and we need to not see it there. Sort that out. You need to make a bit of space. Now on your shape node, for example, you've got visibility and you've got cull faces here. What that does is it would effectively turn the back face off so that you can't see it. However, with text nodes, you don't have that anywhere. So what you need to do is use another node called an override node. So shift space bar, override. And this puts an override node after your text. And we're going to do the same for our text word text. Override again. Now if you select the override node, in the override node you've got all the options that you had in the shape node and that we need for the text. So select the override node and we're looking for cull faces, which is here in visibility. You've got do cull front face, which we don't want to do, and we've got do cull back face, which we do. So if you just check that and then check back face, our text disappears. And we're going to do the same for our text, cull back face, and then it's gone. So now when you play through your animation, you don't actually see that text that's sliding out from behind its mask, like so. Finally, We're going to do exactly the same with our like this, but because our like this, let's go back to perspective, is on the floor here, and we're going to apply the matte kind of here, it's not going to affect anything else, so we can keep it in this system. So select like this, select the merge, add a second merge, bring in your plane, your shape 3D, pipe it in. This time we need to lay it down, so transform, X rotation -90. And again, this time we're going to look at the top view. We need it so that it's big enough to cover our text, so we'll just make sure it is. So it's certainly high enough, it needs to be a bit wider. And then we can slide it up, come to matte, is matte. And now from frame 45, we can select our like this merge node, so the merge that's with the group. At frame 45, we're going to be moving this in the z-axis. So this is already not at 0, so what I'm going to do is come forward to frame 60, set a keyframe for our ending point, come back to 45, set a keyframe from our starting point. I'm just going to drop this down. Again, we've got the issue of the matte is in the same plane exactly as our text, so it's not matting properly. So come to your matte, go to the transform, this time it's on the y-axis, control, command, and just drag up a couple of points until your text disappears, like so. So again, sorry, back to the animation, pull it up so that it's gone. And then we now have our full animation. Now at the minute, we need to move the camera further round for the remainder of the animation and to finish it off, so we'll do that. So we need to come to our camera. So not these instances, but the actual camera node that we had at the start. So at frame 45, we had it here. So we can go another, let's go to frame 75, so it'll take a second. And at frame 75, we can again start with the target, and we can move our target. And where I want it now is going to be at the join between the snappy text and the like this. You can't see the snappy text here because we're looking at this merge. If we want to see the snappy text, it's on this merge. So again, if you just come to view the top with our camera selected, we can just bring this so that it sits kind of in the middle. And now again, we're going to move our camera so that it's at a different angle slightly and pull it back. What we can also do at this point is we can reset your focal length so that you don't get such hard perspectives now. Then we can just pull this out, way out. And between fiddling with the camera and your target, what you might need to do is move that up a bit so that you get your final image kind of where you want it, like so. And that would be your animation. What you now need to do, and you could maybe have done this as you were going along, who knows, my bad, is to sort of start smoothing out some of these animations, because at the minute they're all linear, they all feel a bit sort of rough and not particularly natural. So we will start by smoothing the camera animation. So select your camera node, open your spline editor, and you've got all the camera's keyframes. If you click zoom to fit, you end up with this spaghetti looking thing. All you need to do, select all these nodes and press F for Freddy. And this will flatten all your curves and smooth them out. And then you can play that through. Feels a little bit easier. The next things we want to smooth are our merge nodes where we've animated the text. So again, select each merge for your text. You've got animations on. Select to open the keyframes. And S for sugar. If you want to exaggerate this, you can press T, and then you can increase the easing. If you can do them both the same like I've just done, you can click the lock and just do one of them and they'll both be the same. Like so. Last one, select, zoom to fit, and crank up your easing. And that would be your little animation. If you want to start going crazy and adding colors and stuff, all you do is select your text, select your color, and then use your swatches or your color wheels or your sliders or whatever to change the colors. And it just gave some nice sort of pastel shades that you could use. How mad you want to go with this is entirely up to you. You get the idea, pick your colors, do what you want, but that's your basic animation. It felt like I was rambling. If I was, I'm sorry. I've tried to sort of make everything as understandable as possible. Obviously, you can just keep layering this up and keyframing and animating as you need to. Bear in mind, as I say, with the mattes, is that a matte will affect everything in the scene. So from this angle, for example, the matte for like this is fine. If for whatever reason you wanted to view from underneath, then it would start to hide stuff and you'd have to do the separate render path as we did with the snappy text. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking now. I hope it gave you some useful information. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I've mentioned before, if there's anything that you want me to do a tutorial on, please leave a comment. It's always helpful to sort of get ideas of what people want rather than me just doing random crap. Anyway, catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot. Cheers.